Welcome to the ongoing series in which I attempt to work through the entire original Game Boy library, 3 games at a time. In each episode, I'll talk about one game that I like and one game that I don't. And finally, a third mystery game that could be bad or it could be good. All I can say for sure is that it will certainly be Game Boy. This is the good, the bad, and the Game Boy. I'm sure this one needs no introduction. I think just about everyone is at least somewhat familiar with the Battletoads series, although probably mainly because of the NES game, which is widely accepted as one of, if not the, hardest games of all time. Now, I can't really speak to that, but I will say that the Game Boy version of Battletoads is not nearly as difficult as its NES counterpart. And to be clear, when I say counterpart, that's not to say that this is a direct port. Despite having the same name and box art as the NES game, Battletoads on the Game Boy is an entirely unique experience. Side note, the Game Boy did eventually get a port of the NES game, which they called Battletoads in Ragnarok's World, although that's not the one we're talking about today. Just know that I know that other game exists. This is one of the games I owned as a kid, and while it was never one of my favorite Game Boy games, there's a lot to like about it and I always enjoyed playing it. Graphics are big and nicely detailed, with the same comically exaggerated character artwork and animations that you would expect from the series. The variety of playstyles and stage mechanics was a standout feature of the NES game, and this carries over to the Game Boy game as well, although many of its stages are inspired directly by the levels from the original game. While several levels play more or less as straightforward beat-em-up stages, there are also a few vehicular stages, a twitchy race against the object stage, and a rappelling stage that plays pretty much just like the second level from the NES game, except with a lot more spikes and enemies attacking you from off-screen. And that's probably the greatest flaw in the game. The size of the Game Boy screen was an obstacle that all developers on the system had to overcome. And like most games that tried to recreate NES-accurate graphics, this makes Battletoads more challenging than it should be. While Rare for the most part did an admirable job at compensating for the Game Boy's restricted aspect ratio, there are a number of times that the action seems just a little too big for the screen. In the beat-em-up stages, you can easily take damage from enemies hidden beyond the left and right borders of the screen, and the zoomed-in perspective becomes a pretty major liability in the Brain Boulder stage, where you have very little time to react to the hairpin turns as they come into view. Where this game excels, however, is in its music. David Wise definitely brings his A game to this one, with a couple bangers that I think blow the original game soundtrack out of the water. All in all, Battletoads is a solid game, although its ambitions may have slightly exceeded the kind of experience the Game Boy was realistically capable of providing. Castelian is a port of an NES game, which is itself a port of an 80s computer game. I only know this because it was one of the games included on the Commodore 64 Mini, only there it was called Tower Toppler. I've also heard it called Nebulous and Subline, so apparently it gets a new name every time it's brought to a new system. The NES and Game Boy ports were developed by Bit Studio, who also developed Warlocked on the Game Boy Color, which I really liked, so we're off to a good start. First of all, I love the look of this game. The main character is this green pig mouse aardvark looking thing, and he's pretty cute, I like it. The game's central gimmick is the rotating effect of this tower you're climbing around, and it looks really cool, I like that effect a lot. And apparently Rare did as well, since they copied it for the NES version of Battletoads. Second of all, I hate this game. I'm not at all surprised to learn that this was on computers before it came to the NES and Game Boy, because this is exactly the kind of cheap, bullshit gameplay that I would expect from an 80s computer game, especially from a British developer. No offense. Right off the bat, there's really no music in this game. Outside of the title screen and the bonus levels, the only sounds you're going to hear while you play this game are sound effects that could have directly come from an Atari 2600 game. So whatever music you've been hearing while I've been talking about the game so far, I've added myself. The object of the game is extremely simple. You just have to platform your way to the top of each tower. You jump from block to block, you climb stairs, you ride up elevators, you go in and out of doors, and once you reach the top of the tower, it collapses and you move on to the next tower. However, actually completing this objective is not nearly so simple. Castelian is the epitome of a trial and error game. You are meant to take a very specific path to the top of each tower, and the only way to figure out the correct way is by failing over and over again. There are false blocks that disappear when you walk over them and drop you down to a previous floor. There are doors that open up over nothing, and sometimes when you stop moving you get kind of pushed back by some unseen force. I guess maybe it's supposed to be the wind? Honestly, your guess is as good as mine. There are also enemies patrolling the floors of the tower, which you can defend yourself from by throwing this ball thing at them. Some enemies can be destroyed by this ball, others just get stunned for a few seconds, but most enemies aren't even fazed by it. Taking a hit from any of these enemies won't kill you outright, they'll just knock you down to the lower floor. Did I mention there's a time limit? Yeah, the game gives you pretty much just enough time to make it to the top of each tower. If you make even one mistake, your odds of reaching the end of the level in time are extremely low. And the cherry on top is the controls. Your pig guy moves very sluggishly, and you have to be pretty precise with your jumps. It's a little too easy to miss a block by jumping too early or too late. Oh, and by the way, you jump and attack with the same button. If you are moving when you press the button, you jump. If you're standing still, you throw the ball. This means you have to be extremely careful to come to a complete stop when you attack an enemy. Otherwise, you'll just jump into it. I know this because it happened to me constantly. Now, I can make my peace with this if I were actually playing this on a Commodore 64, since a lot of those old joysticks only had one action button. It was like something out of the dark ages. But I'm playing this game on the system this version of the game was specifically developed for, which has 2 action buttons. I think it goes without saying that I do not recommend this game. So in keeping with the trend of British developed games, for this last game I'm going to take a look at Altered Space, a 3D alien adventure by Software Creations. Now, I mainly know Software Creations as a developer of Tom and Jerry and Silver Surfer on the NES, but I believe a couple of the games they're more fondly remembered for are Solstice and Equinox. If you're familiar with either of those games, that's what they mean by a 3D adventure. It's that slightly disorienting isometric perspective that gives the illusion of 3 dimensions. I remember reading about Altered Space in Nintendo Power years ago as a kid, but this is my first time actually playing it. And there you go, music by Jeff Fallen. Now, Tim Fallen is usually who I associate with the music of Software Creations games, but Jeff has joined in a few times, most notably on Silver Surfer. So if nothing else, I'm sure this game is going to have a great soundtrack. Now right away, I love the design of this main character, Humphrey, the googly-eyed astronaut. As near as I could tell, the object of the game seems to be to move from room to room to locate the exit of each floor of this space station, climbing higher and higher until you presumably escape. Each room is a self-contained puzzle area. You basically just have to navigate to the door leading to the next room. There are usually multiple doors to choose from, so each floor ends up being a giant, confusing maze. And there doesn't seem to be a map, at least not one that I found. So this might be one of those games where it's helpful to draw one yourself. Unfortunately, there really isn't any music during the main game. If you linger on any of the rooms, music will eventually start playing, but it resets when you enter a new room. So moving quickly from room to room basically means you're not going to be hearing any music at all. For what it's worth, the music I have heard is pretty good though. And damn, this game is hard. The weird isometric perspective makes it difficult to judge distances and height, and none of the floating objects cast a shadow, which makes platforming extremely tricky. At the bottom of the screen, this number ticking down is your air gauge, which is essentially your life bar. Your air supply will slowly deplete on its own, but you're mainly going to be losing air by taking damage. Landing on spikes or getting killed by an enemy makes Humphrey explode and respawn at the entrance to the room, and it will also take away a big chunk of his air. Sometimes enemies are just waiting for you as soon as you enter the room, and they are again right there when you respawn at the door, so your air supply can get whittled down very quickly, and usually very cheaply. Occasionally you'll find a replacement air tank which will refill your air gauge to its maximum level of 99, but these are few and far between and don't really do much to offset how easily the game can sap away your air supply. So I guess the question is, do I like Altered Space? Not really. Now I really want to like it, The graphics and character design are definitely appealing, and there's nothing wrong with the controls. But the weird perspective on the tiny, cramped Game Boy screen makes the game very awkward to play, and I gotta be honest, not very fun. If you're a die-hard fan of Solstice or Equinox, you might have a bit more patience for this game than I did. So 3 games down and many, many more to go. In the next episode, we'll take a look at 3 more Game Boy games, but in the meantime, thank you for watching The Good, the Bad, and the Game Boy.